Step outside of your comfort zone. See the world with a whole new perspective. Join us and experience the unexplained on the Paranormal View.
And welcome everybody right here to the Paranormal View on the ParaX Radio Network. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to be with us tonight. Those here in the chat room and those listening from around the world. We appreciate each and every one of you. It's kind of cold and damp here tonight, so excuse me. And if you do have questions tonight, you can private chat them to Ceiling Cat or myself, Henry Foister, and we will get those answered for you. And if you're listening from somewhere else other than in the chat room, then you can take and come over to para-x.com, click on the Chat Now button, and go through the little process there, and you'll be in the chat room with all these wonderful people. Or if you don't want to come over and you have questions, you can send them to the paranormalview at gmail.com and just put attention question and we will get those answered for you. Got a great show lined up tonight, a returning guest, which Jeff will tell you about here in a minute. And tonight we have with us Jeffrey Gould. Maybe. Is he having problems getting on?
Yeah, I think the Skype gods kicked him off again.
Again. Okay. All right. Well, Jeff Wilson, can you turn your sound down just a little bit because your microphone's picking up a lot of background noise?
Okay, I will attempt it, but I'm not sure if I'm able to do it. So it's oh gosh.
Oh, you go down.
I'm on the Skype now, and I'm turning it down just a little bit now. Are we a little bit better now?
Yes.
Much better.
Yes.
Is that better? Okay, terrific.
That's better, right there. And since Jeff's not back, I know Barbara probably doesn't have the bio, but I will come up with something anyway. So we got Barbara Duncan with us.
Yep, I'm here.
And our guest is a returning guest who's been on before. He is from Ohio, and he is the author of a couple of books that we've got so far, the Ohio Legends Volume 1 and Volume 2. And tonight we're going to be talking about Volume 2. And there is a lot of good stuff in here. I'm going to go ahead and just introduce Jeff and let him come on in. Jeff, welcome.
Welcome, Henry. Thank you so much for having me on again. And it's great to hear your voice again, Barb. I can't see you, but you must be a nice person. But thanks again for giving me a chance to share some of my books with you guys tonight. I have a grand mix of Ohio history and trivia, and of course paranormal stories to share with you.
Yes, there is.
And I promised myself this time not to talk so much and let you guys ask some questions. So if I could start off, Barb, with you, if you have any questions.
Well, threw me off guard there for a minute.
Well, I should do my own kind of a bio. Should I?
Well, but I want to know, in your local area, or even in your own house, have you experienced anything paranormal?
Yes and no and yes. This is a convoluted question, but it's one of those things where until I actually experience something paranormal, I dismissed everything else as just so much fluff and nonsense. You know what I'm saying? I think the last time I was on, I described the story where I was working on the PM shift as a courier for a overnight freight company, which has to remain nameless now. And during my shift, I had to pick up from the basement of the Kettering Tower. Now, the Kettering Tower is a huge building in downtown Dayton, very, 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 very big. Anyway, the point of the story is I rode the elevator down to the basement where this drop box was, where you would put your letters and stuff like that for overnight delivery. Anyway, I came back up from the elevator, and I had all of the documents in this tub-like thing I was carrying. And of course, mindful that I only am allowed a few minutes in between stops, I rushed towards the turnstile, and they also had one of those push bar doors that was next to the turnstile door. And I turned around. You know, what happened is I walked up, and usually the Kettering Tower is populated with the cleaning crew and the security people and maybe some loafers and stuff. And there was this funny-looking man that was right next to the push-bar door. And because it's downtown Dayton and because it's very dark at night, I'm always real nervous about anyone working around me or anyone being that close to me, because sadly there are things that happen downtown. People will knock you over the head for $5. Anyway, the point of the story is there's this little man who was standing there. He's in full color, 3D, and I turned around to hit the push bar to open to get to my truck. And when I turned around, this guy was gone. Now, it was only the space of half a breath, a half a second. He was in there 1 second, and as I turned around, he was gone the very next second. And there was no time. The lobby and mezzanine level of the Kettering Tower is just huge. There was no way that the guy could have walked away quickly or ran away or anything in that half of a second took for me to turn around and with my hip bumped the door open, and he was just gone. And then from that time on, I pretty much reconsidered the whole paranormal thing, and I also made it back to the station in record time that night too. But the original thing was that I wasn't going to include anything in Ohio Legends that was paranormal, because I thought there's nothing to it, right? Because you know how everyone believes that, well, they have a lot of resistance to it. But until I experienced it myself, that changed my attitude. And of course, I give PowerPoint presentations, because my books are pretty much graphic based, to historic societies, and I sell the books as fundraisers through them to help the societies out. But anyway, since that became part of my books, Ohio Legends 1 and 2, it wasn't in there before, just a sampling of some of the wonderfully odd things that are going on in the state. So that's how until I saw it, until I experienced that feeling, that something happened that should not have happened, I had no interest in the paranormal. But, seeing is believing, and everybody would always counter, well, you believe there is a Grand Canyon, even though you've never seen it with your own eyes. And I think that's pretty much how it sits with me now. So There's a lot more going on than I understand.
Jeff, you make it back?
Again, I talk too much.
I am. I had to reboot my whole computer. Hopefully the connection will hold. Interestingly enough, Jeff, and sorry I missed the intro, whenever I hear somebody say, there's no such thing as ghosts, I consider that rather human arrogance to say. So I'm glad that you had an experience, and I look forward to hearing the start of it, but when I play this back, what I prefer people say isn't that there's no such thing as ghosts, but that they say, I have never personally had a paranormal experience. Because like you say, just because someone hasn't been to the Grand Canyon doesn't mean it isn't there.
Yeah, it was quite a shock to me. But it's one of those things where it's an arrogance, I think, is the word to use, and that's to me that is so succinct and so right for the experience, because like before, I pretty much knew everything, so maybe I don't now. But anyway, well, good to hear from you, Jeffrey.
This book, Ohio Legends 2, just like Ohio Legends 1, is filled with everything dealing with something from Ohio. And it's got some comedy in it. It's got stories that you probably don't remember or haven't heard. It's got also some paranormal stuff in it. And we're going to attempt to go around asking a whole bunch of this stuff. One of the first things, I done went through the whole thing and got 2 pages worth of stuff. But on page 10, right off the bat, everybody probably has heard of Annie Oakley. Now, I used to watch Annie Oakley on TV too. It's
back when you were in the mining days in the 1800s.
Yeah,
there, right?
that was back when I owned a horse. Yeah, but it's real interesting. I've been up to where Annie Oakley was born, and I've been up to her gravesite. A lot of people probably didn't realize, it's a real person, but yeah, it was a real person. And your story that you are writing about her in this is. She almost prevented the First World War.
Yes.
You want to tell us about that?
Well, I got a real special place in my heart for Annie Oakley. Just this past year, I went to the Garst Museum and I gave a PowerPoint presentation of local history that was specific to Greenville and Darke County and stuff. But so anyway, as the story goes with Annie Oakley, she was pretty much a superstar at her time. Back then, everybody knew her. She was, when she was traveling with the Wild West show, especially in Europe, crowds would come from everywhere to see her. She was the superstar at the time. Anyway, the point of the story was that she was in Europe. And she was putting on a sharpshooting act, and what happened was she asked for a volunteer from the audience so that she could shoot the ash off of a cigar on somebody. If they held it in their teeth, she would at I think it was 40 or 60 feet shoot the ash of a guitar, but off the end of the cigar. But in this instance. The newly crowned German Emperor, Kaiser Wilhelm II, stood up and said he volunteered for the trick shot, and nobody in his entourage was able to stop him before he came down from the audience, and he very carefully shot the ash off the Kaiser's cigar. But there are a lot of historians that would like to say that if Annie had missed and hit the Kaiser, World War I would have been avoided. Now, the gag of the story, the true, of course it's true also, is after World War I had began and Germany had declared war on the United States, Annie personally wrote the Kaiser and asked for another shot, but he politely refused. But how this has linkage for me is right across from where my shop is. It's across where the Amateur Trap Shooting Association used to run the Grand National Trap Shoots, and Annie in her 70s competed and won. She was a terrific woman. She really was 5 and just a little over 5 feet tall. And when she won the trap shoot, she had suffered a traffic accident a few years before that pretty much debilitated her, and she had to stand on a mechanical brace for her leg. But the point is, she still won. She was an amazing woman. The story is she gave away most of her fortune because most of it was gone because she had helped so many young women go through college or attend a grade school, for an education. She was an amazing woman, but she was blessed with 40/20 eyesight, most people figure, and the reason that she was such a terrific shot is ammo costs a lot of money back then. Well, comparatively for her, because her father was dead and her mom was trying to raise. Annie was the youngest of all the kids, trying to raise them on a farm, and they were desperately poor and hungry most of the time. So Annie took her gun and she swore she wouldn't miss because the ammunition cost money. And as the story goes, later on in life, she was able to pay off her mother's mortgage on the farm, which is pretty wonderful. But that's that's a short synopsis of this wonderful lady from North Star, Ohio.
They are telling us in the chat room we can call you Jeff and call Jeff Jeffrey.
Or Badger. You know.
Well, Jeffrey or Badger. That way, when we say Jeff, you guys won't get mixed up and say, "Who are you talking to?"
We'll still get mixed up.
We'll both say "huh" at the same time. But exactly. But the Garst Museum is just a jewel. It's up there in Greenville. It's unexpected. Usually when you go to a lot of small town museums, they're pretty much constricted to a small room with dusty farm implements and stuff. But the presentation that they have and the dosage they have in there are just terrific, and they're real knowledgeable. And everybody's got a few minutes to spend to talk to you. They never brush you off. They're really great people up there.
Yeah, we went through the Annie Oakley Museum up there, which I thought was a real great display that they had. They had a lot of her stuff in there. She eventually died, sadly, of lead poisoning.
No.
Yeah.
Not like somebody shot her, though, I hope.
No, there was a pernicious anemia that was caused. Well, she was handling all the ammunition for all that time. But the thing about Andy that really killed me, when I went to the Garst, I took this huge tape measure with me. And what I did is, and when I was at the lectern in front of the people that had come to that day, we took and spooled it out so you could see how far 90 feet was, because it's real easy, to not understand some of these stories, how some of the feats that she did were unbelievable. Now, at 90 feet with a .22 rifle, Annie could shoot a playing card, not face up, where all the dots on the card, diamonds on the card are there, but edge on. She could hit a target edge on at 90 feet. This is really amazing. But even more amazing is after she hit the playing card at 90 feet, as it would flutter to the ground, she would usually put 3 more holes in it. Wow. So, yeah, and it was, and whenever you actually see how far 90 feet is, it's the woman was incredible. And, she did her best to spread the wealth around, and there's a reason that she's an Ohio legend. She's pretty wonderful.
What kind of gun did she rely on the most?
I forgot the name of the manufacturer, but it was a .22 rifle. That was her favorite. So
it wasn't like a Winchester or anything.
No, it wasn't one of those high caliber ones and guns and stuff. That's the strange part of the museum is when you go there and you expect to see all these different firearms and different things. The ones that she used that were her favorites were small caliber, and especially the repeating rifles. But the strange part about it is that really kind of got me is you always see these pictures of Annie Oakley, and she's posed with this huge rifle in her hand. The thing of it is that throws you off is she was so short. She was only like 5'1" or 5'2", something like that. And that's why all the rifles look like these incredible, 4-foot long,
guns,
machine guns on them. It's really something to see. But I'll promise myself I wouldn't talk so much again. Sorry.
Jeff, you got one, or Barbara? If not, I got plenty also. So
I think Jeff dropped off again. So I want to talk because we're getting close to Halloween. that Ohio actually has something very similar to the headless horseman, and that is the headless motorcyclist from Elmore, Ohio.
Mm-hmm. Elmore, I have got that. This is on my bucket list. I'm going to go to every one of these places I've written about. But Elmore has got to be the quirkiest little town in America. It's they have this. There used to be a coffin manufacturer in Elmore, Ohio, that was real big at the turn of the century. And there's still a lot of coffins around in the town because every year up and down Main Street they have coffin drag races. And part of the thing is everybody dresses up like zombies, and they have these incredible races where they have you've seen long-distance races where they pass a baton or something like that during the Olympics. Well, in Elmore, Ohio, they pass body parts. The runners are dressed up like zombies, and they'll pass to one runner to the next. Instead of a baton, usually an arm or a leg. It sounds pretty gruesome. But,
so you could really win by a nose.
Yeah, well, really, that does make sense because that's not that much to haul around. But if you have a chance to get on the web and check out some of these amazing pictures of some of these home-built and coffins that they've converted into drag racers, it's pretty outrageous. But another thing that's crazy about the town is, aside from zombie races passing body parts, is Elmore used to be the home of a real widely known meat packing company. And their sausage apparently was just to die for. And in order to, during the event, they would have a sausage toast where they would pass out uncooked, mind you, sausage, and whoever could throw the sausage the farthest was the winner. And I think this past year, I think it was the year before, that they have another special event that they have for New Year. They have a huge sausage that's illuminated that at the stroke of midnight for the beginning of the new year drops from one of the cranes that they have, announcing the new year.
Like the ball
This
drop.
sounds like my kind of town.
Yeah, that's wonderfully kooky. I just love this stuff.
Wow.
Well, you were mentioning the casket races. While I'm desperately trying to actually hear all of a single story, all I can think of is when you're done, there you've already got the casket, so you automatically have a beer.
Drinking and driving, okay?
I was B-I-E-R, actually.
A beer! Oh, God, oh, jeez, oh.
So what's the story behind the headless motorcycle?
Oh, yeah, that's what started all of this.
Yeah.
I can't. The page isn't in front of me yet. For the folks
70,
at home,
yeah.
It's page 70. Okay.
Yeah.
For the folks at home, there is each page is a separate specific story. So in Ohio Legends 1 and 2, combined, they have about 300 pages. So what happens, because I don't have terrific recall, is I have to look up my own story that I wrote. Wow. But apparently it was during World War I, and it was a story about this motorcyclist who returned from the war and discovered his girlfriend or his wife with another man, and angrily he took off on his motorcycle, and he drove so recklessly that just down the road a mile or so he had an accident and he died. But part of it was he lost his head, and as the story goes, his head has never been recovered, but
Dog drug it off.
and there was but the point of the story was that his head had never been found, but it's the one site on this specific road near Elmore there are consistent, year after year, consistent reports of a mysterious light that is seen going down the road, a single headlight, as if it was a motorcycle headlight that suddenly disappears. And it's been seen for generations. It's been going on since the 1920s. And in order to honor that event, these quirky, wonderful people from Elmore, they put on a headless ghost rider poker thing, and they all get out on their motorcycles, and they call it the Grub and Suds Run, where they all gather and drink beer and go to some place to eat and drink more beer, and they do a poker run. But it's one of those things where this little small town, it's a wonderful little town, I understand, that's has turned this into like a whole public event every year. I love these stories.
Now, anybody who has watched TV growing up is probably familiar with Batman. Now, in Dayton, Ohio, and it's on page 17, you have a thing called Buckeye Batmobiles. So why don't you tell the story about that?
Well, I'm still trying to find 17. I know it's here somewhere. But anyway, I believe it's on Neva Drive. It's, of course, I haven't found it yet. Here it is. Yes, they make reproductions of they have two versions, the original Adam West Batman and the Michael Keaton version of the Batmobile. Now, they're both two different models, and they're great mock-ups and stuff, and they're all out of fiberglass, and they're able to run on the road. They have a tube chassis with Corvette engines and a retractable 30 caliber machine guns. It only fires blanks now, and it actually has P-51 gun sights on that one, and they sell for about $100,000 to $120,000 when they're complete. But they call
twice the price.
But they also make a version for Robin's. In the Adam West series where Robin had his motorcycle, and they make a version of that too. But what's surprising is they've been in business for a while and they're doing very well. Thank you very much.
I remember Batgirl having a motorcycle. Robin just was a passenger in the Batmobile, I always thought.
Oh, no, he had a motorcycle.
Did he? Oh, okay.
Yeah. But
It's been a few decades since.
Me too. But there's a lot of very inventive people that are just doing crazy things in the state. I don't know if it's the state that makes them just a little bit odd, but they're all in their own way paranormal.
So you're saying that everybody in Ohio is off, you might say?
Well, I don't know. You're from Ohio too, aren't you, Henry?
Yeah, well, they keep telling me I'm not right.
Own it. We have to own it because that's where we're from. But like I said, Ohio has always been filled with people that don't fit archetypes of inventors or visionaries. They're always out there finding their own path, which is in its own way wonderful, But if you look around, there's more stories.
Oh yeah, there's lots. If you jump up to page 31, it talks about a girl by the name of Cassie Chadwick, and she was a con artist.
She was great. She really she was good at what she did. Let's just say it. In 1902, she spent all this money and claimed that she was the illegitimate daughter of Andrew Carnegie. And she was such a terrific con artist that she would go into a bank and say, well, Andrew Carnegie is my father, and I'm her illegitimate daughter. And by the way, could you give me a note for $40,000? Well, and in Oberlin, Ohio, she actually walked out of the bank with $340,000 plus a personal loan of $100,000 from the president of the bank. And she went around. Yeah, she did really well. The historians figure the notes were worth about $7.5 million. And eventually, people have a way of, getting caught up in their lives and stuff. And when she was arrested and sentenced to 14 years in Ohio State Penitentiary. But when she was arrested, it was discovered that she was wearing a money belt that contained $100,000. Now that's a lot of money at the turn of the century.
Oh yeah.
And so in 1985, a movie was made about Cassie Chadwick, titled Love and Larceny. It was made in Canada and starring Jennifer Dale, that won Best TV Award in 1986. So there are bad men from Ohio, but sometimes there are bad women. But she did very well at that until she was caught.
Now,
That was pretty sweet.
would you have another one, Barbara?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, well, I got plenty too, so I'm gonna just jump right in. You got one on page 46, and I know a lot of people probably when they were younger. I didn't, but I'm sure a lot of the younger people did. They would read books about Nancy Drew, and you talk about the real Nancy Drew, Mildred Augustine Wirt Benson.
She was a ghostwriter who did the Nancy Drew mysteries, and she was born and grew up in Toledo, Ohio, and she had worked as a newspaper reporter for the Toledo Parade, but secretly wrote 23 of the first 25 Nancy Drew mysteries. And she was kind of like, Stan Lee. She never really got anything much for what she had done. And the real writers of Nancy Drew, there had been a host of them over the years that had written Nancy Drew mysteries. So so Nancy Drew, was from Toledo. So anyway, the real Mildred Wirt Benson was just as independent and gutsy as her Nancy Drew character. And she had a dispute between the publishers because of some of her writings, and they had a long drawn-out court case, and it was discovered that she was the one who had written the Nancy Drew mysteries, which is pretty neat. But she was a pretty tough and little lady, and she had a master's degree in journalism and worked for the Toledo Valley for over 50 years. And no one knew at the time that she was the real author. So there's that, and everybody loves her stories. But if there was time, I'd go into the real Mildred Wirt Benson because she herself was just an amazing person, a strong and independent lady. But anyway, she wrote altogether 135 books with a dozen different pen names, and her favorite pen name was I forgot her pen name, but it was the Penny Parker series, and it was actually published under her real name. But that's another story too. So the trouble of it is I stumble across these stories about these remarkable women and these remarkable inventors and stuff like that, and there is just way too much information to stuff onto one page. But that's been for a lot of people that tell me that they like the books, that they like it being a spiral-bound book where all the stories are a single page and they're able to burn through it, And they like the kind of a small format that I had done. Originally, I planned it so that way it would try to interest kids, with big graphic drawings and cartoon-like drawings to try to get kids interested in a local history. And I had an awful lot of fun doing the illustrations for the pages, and a lot of people say that they love the art.
Well, you do a great job with the art because all the pictures and everything on every page is what you have drawn.
Yeah, I love doing that part about it because it gives me the opportunity to try to bring these characters back in life. But the art has been an awful lot of fun. But there are also some people that tell me that the books are great for the bathroom. Yeah,
or coffee table. A lot of people come in, if I've got it laying out, they'll just pick it up and start reading on it. They're really good books, and we'll let everybody know how they can get a hold of them a little bit later.
Thank you.
But they have a lot of information. I mean, even though it's one page per story, you get the gist of it, and you don't realize how much stuff there has been or come from Ohio, and that's what all these stories and little short pages are about. So,
well, I have to admit that during one of the things at the beginning was I read an article by a fellow who was describing Ohio as pretty much a pool table, all green and flat, and nothing more than just a flyover state. And whenever I was first bitten by the history bug. About some of these places and some of the terrible and wonderful things that have happened, and these people, these amazing people. I had to do something.
Well, I just want to let everybody know that's in the chat room. If you do have questions, you can private chat them to H. Foister or Ceiling Cat, and we will get those answered for you. And if you are not in the chat room, but you have questions, you can send a question to the Paranormal View at gmail.com, and we will get that and get it answered for you. Or you can come over and join all these fine folks here at ParaX. Just go to para-x.com and click on the Chat Now button, and you'll be in with all these wonderful people. So,
and while we're giving away plugs, I've got a plug of mine. Okay, right now I'm working on Ohio Legends 3. I'm roughly about halfway through the third edition of this nonsense. But the best of my leads for good stories come from readers. People like you, a lot of people from Facebook, they'll send me ideas for stories, and that's where I've gotten most of the leads to start chasing down a story from. I spend a lot of time in libraries, I guess you know. But there is a lot of my information comes from folks like you who come across something that's odd about Ohio and send me an email saying, Jeff, have you ever heard of this or that? Or like an example, the Great Blue Hole, or the Alum Creek horror, or some of these wonderful things that are going on. But I had to put that plug in there because I'm always looking for one more good, goofy story about Ohio.
Jeff, Barbara, you guys got one now?
No, I'm just enjoying. I'm amazed I'm still listening. I haven't been kicked off or anything.
So one of my favorite is because I love the song, but I had no idea there was an Ohio connection, and that is the SS Edmund Fitzgerald.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Called the Toledo Express.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where everybody loves. Was it Gordon Lightfoot, I guess? The sung that song. Yep. It's just spellbinding because, of course, I love even music that tells a story. But the guy who was the captain of the ship, I can't remember his name right now, but I guess he loved the Edmund Fitzgerald, and usually while he was going through his locks, his warship was being staged through the locks, he would have a running commentary that he would play over the PA system for anyone that was gathered by the locks close by. And he would describe some of the tonnage of the ship and play music, and he loved the ship. And it's a great one of those disaster maritime, death at sea things. It's on a par with the Sultana disaster, but it's wonderful. I love it.
Let's see. Oh, I don't see his name.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. What? Yeah, Peter Pulser.
Peter Pulser. That was the captain. Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. But yeah, that's pretty neat. Yeah.
How did it become the Toledo?
Well, see, it was it had set
was
distance
built-
and time.
Was it built
ratings.
there?
Excuse me?
Wasn't it built in Toledo? Or was that where it was?
Yeah, I don't
moored.
have all the information in front of me. I got to see if I can. I
Oh,
only
page
wrote
55, sorry.
Yeah, I only wrote the book. I don't know where nothing is. But I knew for me, just a pencil drawing, 56, did you say? Yeah, 55. The pencil drawing was a tough one to do because, drawing the Fitzgerald, so it actually looked like the Fitzgerald.
And that is the most amazing photograph or drawing. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. It's been such a challenge. Some of these stories have been a challenge and really stretched me, so I had to try even harder. But it was but it's one of those things where I wanted to keep the kind of Ripley's Believe It or Not feel throughout, and have only black and white drawings, you know.
You do a great job with them.
Well, it's that's been most of the fun, and of course, second only to meeting a lot of these crazy folks. I've actually talked to some of the relatives of these people while I was doing the stories, and they always have at least one good anecdote about them, you know. But okay.
All right, Jeff, was Jeffrey? Was that you?
What?
Was that you?
What?
I heard a.
What?
Did you hear that?
No, I don't think so. I had my mic.
It sounded like somebody was popping a cold one, so to speak.
Something
No,
or
I
other.
the can's over on the desk.
No, that's what it sounded like. I heard something. So yeah. All right. It's about time for us to take us a quick little break. I'm not going to do long breaks tonight because my sound still is not right, and I don't think it's going to be right until Skype actually forces me to update, and then it's probably
at least
not
you're
gonna-
online.
Yeah, that's true. And
Yeah,
so-
because when we come back, we have to talk about Clark Gable.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. Which people doesn't realize how many famous people has actually come from here. And there's one that I don't know if you've wrote about yet or not. Hopalong Cassidy. Have you wrote about him yet?
Yeah, well, actually, that was one of a couple of stories. Which that's the trouble with being 64 like I am, and they're writing books for a young audience. They don't know who Hopalong Cassidy was. And I did a page on Phyllis Diller, and everybody knows Phyllis Diller. What a wonderful comedian she was. And these kids, they say, "Oh, who's she?"
That's right.
You know, and what was it? Paul Lynde. Remember Paul Lynde from the Hollywood Squares? You know, he was from Ohio, and the list just goes on and on and on. I think the one thing that gave me pause was when I was describing Margaret Mitchell. We talked about Jeffrey and I talked about Margaret Mitchell on our last show, and how she had got her start in life as a kindergarten teacher, and of course some kids will know who Jim Backus was. But there was also Jim Backus was one of her students in the kindergarten, and so was William Wyndham. My World and Welcome to It, and I think the Walter Mitty movie. They were biographies of Thurber, James Thurber, and of course James Thurber, is one of my personal heroes from Ohio, and. But of course, I did a page on him. But that's the trouble is trying to speak to a younger audience who has no notion, who Roy Rogers was, or Hopalong Cassidy,
Or Red Skelton.
Red Skelton. It's another one. It's TV that I grew up on, and I just love the characters, and they have no idea, what the contribution was that they made. But anyway,
how about even something as simple as Topo Gigio?
Topo Gigio. Now that's like one of those things where I can't do,
Ed Sullivan.
I'd love to do something on it, but with modern
sort of
sensibilities, modern.
Well, he was.
Go ahead.
Oh well, he's by today's standards, he's stereotypical, but at the time, he was actually done, I think, by Italian by an Italian puppeteer. So that was just how he talked.
And there was another comedian who, come on. Oh, gosh, okay. Now, Jeffrey, you may remember Father Guido Sarducci.
Oh, yeah, from Saturday Night Live and all.
He was from Ohio, and I ran across with a couple of kids. I said, remember Saturday Night Live and, Father Guido Sarducci? I forget the guy's real name, but he was from somewhere in northern Ohio. But the point of the story was they didn't know who he was.
I don't he was back in an era when Saturday Night Live was still funny.
You're right.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take us a quick break, and I'm going to let Jeffrey take us out.
Yeah, so you're listening to the Paranormal View on para-x.com with your hosts Henry Foister, ceiling cat Barbara Duncan, and myself, Jeffrey Gould, with tonight's guest, Jeffrey Wilson, right? What am I saying?
Yes.
Of course it's Wilson. I don't know why I was almost saying something else. So stay tuned for more wacky Ohio-ness after the break.
Oh, that's fun. You're nice people, you know that? Thank you very much.
Mute your mic.
Okay, hold on a second. Let me see if I can get the sound turned down even more. Is that a little bit better? Or is that too much?
The new Ghosts and Legends tour is a
Just don't say anything.
70-minute dusk time stroll.
Whether you're listening at home, at work, or anywhere, thanks for making Para X part of your day. Your source for everything paranormal, Para X.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Paranormal View right here on the Para X Radio Network. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to be with us tonight, those listening here in chat room and those listening from around the world. And Barbara, tonight, where do we have listeners from?
Let me scroll back to that page, but it's kind of extensive. The United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, Belgium, France, and our little friend Unknown is back.
All right. We like to have that little friend Unknown. No telling how many of them's listening on that
Listening
planet.
from an observatory from Sunspot, New Mexico.
Oh, yeah. We got...
your textile is at work.
Yeah. Well, we got Jeffrey Gould with us.
Hello, hello.
And Barbara Duncan.
Yep, I'm here.
And our guest, Jeff Wilson.
Hello, hello.
All right. Now, apparently, you don't realize that we're live when we go to break. You should have a button on your microphone to turn it off altogether. Or
Gotcha.
if you go and look on Skype, there's a button on there to mute the sound. So,
Okay.
But you have to do it one way or the other. Otherwise, we keep hearing all your noise.
My apologies.
No problem. You're learning.
We've had guests that went off and talked to people during the break and not even realize that we're all here.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Well, how do you know when you get back on after the commercial break?
Well, you can
will
still
suddenly start
you'll
saying,
be
"Welcome back."
you'll be able to hear me talking. If you hear the commercials, you'll be able to hear me talk when we come back.
Yeah, we can't hear the commercials, though.
Yeah, it was silent again.
Oh, is it?
Well, I'm a dog. What can I tell
Yeah. Yeah, you'll get used to it.
You got to be kidding me.
You're a celebrity now. You're going to get used to it.
you? Yeah, sure. Yeah. But that's okay. I'm old and I'm foolish, and I've got the time now because I'm retired to have my excesses. So that's okay with me.
You get to be old and quirky.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Eccentric, I think, is the...
Wow, I don't understand why it's not letting you guys hear it because it still says sharing sounds. I mean, it's on there stop sharing sounds, and I'm not getting stopped. So, all right.
Yeah, well, whatever.
Yeah.
In the meantime, before break, we were talking about famous people from Ohio, and I had no idea Clark Gable was from Ohio.
Yes, and believe it or not, Patsy and I went to Cadiz, and the house that he was born in or raised in for a few years is now like a museum, and we went through that. That was pretty interesting. So, go ahead, Jeff, and tell us about Clark.
Well, the neatest part about me, well, the neatest part about Clark Gable for me was that that he was just a regular fella. I mean, he was dyslexic. He had trouble reading or remembering his lines, and he had a real struggle. You would think that, here's this macho man, doing all these wonderful parts, Gone with the Wind. I mean, he's the thing, but his Gable's father never really approved of him being an actor, and he often referred to Clark Gable as a pansy or a sissy because he was an actor, and didn't get his hands dirty. Well, and just stories about him, flesh him out to make him less of an icon and more of just a regular fella who was, like he called himself, just a poor slob from Cadiz, Ohio. And I don't know. I just love that story about him. He really was something. But anyway, of course, the story I have chronicles his career. About his mother died when he was 7, and at 16 he quit school, and went to work for a living. All this stuff that you find out about him. And actually, when he died, he had a heart attack because he was changing the tire on his Jeep that he has, which he had at the time. And that was, of course, one of those macho enterprises, that he changed the own tire in his Jeep. I just love the thing, the whole story about him. It was, but like you said, another celebrity from Ohio.
Oh, yeah. It Happened One Night was one of my favorite movies, Clark Gable movies.
Was that where he was handcuffed to that girl and they was running away from the police? And
he was bringing a girl back from
right.
She run away from home.
Right, yeah. Right. Yeah, that's it. That was a good show. Sure.
The Walls of Jericho. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, he carried himself so well with so much confidence and stuff like that. And if you really take a close look at his face, he was not a pretty guy. I mean, his he had huge ears. He looked like a cab with both doors standing open. But it was his presence that he had, and his confidence, and the way he delivered his lines that women all over the world just fell in love with him, and guys wanted to be more like him. So.
Yep.
Anyway.
Yep. He was in a lot of movies. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's one that you got, and I'll give you the page number so you can go ahead and look it up. It's on page 61.
Uh-huh.
This is one of the paranormal ones that you had in the book. I hadn't heard about this, and I'm going to have to look it up and see where it's actually at and if they're doing anything like investigating it or something. But it's called the Gore Orphanage Legend.
Yeah, that was a real surprise to me. It was my first real shocker on Facebook because I posted a story. It's somewhere close to Cleveland, and all of a sudden, within 3 days, it had 23,000 people that liked it, viewed it, and there were some incredible hundreds of numbers of shares that it had on it, and it really surprised me. But I guess it's real well known in northern Ohio. But the Gore Orphanage is really a kind of a misnomer because there is a Gore Orphanage Road, and the word Gore is actually it means a triangular piece of land. But the real institution that stood on a spot that most people call Gore Orphanage was an orphanage for children, and it was called the Light of Hope Orphanage. And at the time, it was the here I am reading my own work, but the orphanage burned to the ground, and some children were killed. But at the time that it burned, it was owned, the mansion that became. Well, I'm mixing up my storyline here. Anyway, I'm all over the place. Well, anyway, it was a mansion that had burned to the ground, and the Wilbur family, no, the Swift family mansion that later became an orphanage. Thank you. The Light of Hope orphanage that burned to the ground. And the Swift family was known to, back at the time, spiritualists were real big, and they were known to that they were trying to contact one of the children who had passed during a diphtheria epidemic. And they had a lot of spiritualists came in to try to contact this child. And then later, of course, it became known as the orphanage, and it burned to the ground. Anyway, the point of the story is there's pretty much just a wreck now. There's some foundations that are left there, and a lot of people have gone out and investigated. But the point of the story that got me was this: after the cars would pull up and everybody would spend the day or the night investigating it, that they would, of course, see nothing there. There has been reports of some sighting of children that were playing in the woods and singing songs and stuff like that. But the thing that most people have reported is whenever they get ready to leave, there are little handprints all over their car in the dust, because it's a pretty pretty off-road, kind of gravel roads going back to the orphanage or where the orphanage once stood. And that's the part of the story. But it got a terrific amount of attention on Facebook. It's the first time anything just went crazy for me, and it was a fun story to tell. But that's
I'll have to check and see where that's at. Maybe one day I might have to take a ride up there and just see what it is. You said it's just like foundations. It's all that's left. There's nothing else there.
Yeah.
Is it on?
No, the fire had destroyed pretty much the entire mansion, and at the time it was an orphanage. There's just like some foundations, and there's a lot of thick woods where the scrub
Where it's
and
screwed
forest
up.
have reclaimed its own.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We got I guess another one where it deals with the paranormal that you've got in the book, and that's on page 62, which is right next to that one, and it's called The Ohio Grassman.
Well, now you guys from out west are not going to like this story, because it's pretty much about the grassman. Now the grassman has been one of those phenomenon that have been an Ohio thing for years and years and years. Probably not as long as the great Northwest, the Pacific Northwest Sasquatch, but people have been making these sightings of the Ohio grassman, and supposedly it was featured on one of these programs of what do you call it? It's on TV that looking for Sasquatch or the Bigfoot. But but allegedly, supposedly, now the Ohio grassman is supposedly much shorter than his cousin out west, and we claim that he's smaller and smarter because he builds has been known to inhabit and steal a lot of corn from cornfields, and has built these like rough bomas or rough places to sleep out of brush and scrub and stuff. And they're known to live in family knots of about 5. And they are also known to hunt deer, and they act cooperatively with each other to run down deer for food. And it's very similar, shorter but there are a great many amount of sightings that are happening in southern Ohio, or especially southeast Ohio. And it's another one of those cryptids that we haven't exactly been able to lay our hand on what people are seeing, but they are seeing something. There are so many sightings and so many reports of it. I just didn't even bother trying to list them because they were so, the recent stuff was going on. But it did give me a terrific chance to do a great drawing.
Yeah, it was. Mm-hmm.
But it was another one of those fun cryptids, because there's a pile of them in Ohio. Go ahead. Does any of your folks in the chat room have any questions for me?
They haven't sent me one yet, so we're still waiting on that.
We're going to have to scold them for not participating. Right? But anyway,
well, we got another one that deals with the paranormal, and you've got it in your book. It's on page 95, and it's called the Moonville Tunnel.
Yeah. Now the Moonville Tunnel, that one is especially weird, because that one is, there are newspaper reports that corroborate these stories that are like an ongoing thing. 95, okay. Yeah, Moonville is a town that there are roads going to this town, but the locals have learned that if you're going to get to Moonville and you're in a hurry and you just don't have that much time, you will take the bridge or the tunnel, and that leads right directly into Moonville without having to, it's a great shortcut. But the trouble about it was that whenever you're walking through the tracks or down the tracks into Moonville, and a train would approach, and at those sections and those elevations, they're moving pretty quick. There have been some incredible number of people that have died inside the tunnel being run down by the train. But this story that I have, it concentrates on this fellow named Rastus Dexter, who in 1859 was another victim of the train. And supposedly, as the legend goes, he was inside the tunnel, and he had a lantern that he would swing in front of him, perpendicular to the tracks, as a warning to the engineer that there was someone inside the tunnel. The engineer could not stop the train in time, and he was killed. But as the story goes, this ghost keeps reappearing and reliving its last few minutes like a bad tape recording, and he has stopped many trains over the years because the light was inside the tunnel swinging back and forth like as a warning, and the engineer would stop the train, then of course no one would be there. It was another one of those strange lights that just keep appearing with a regular frequency. In 1895, the Chillicothe Gazette reported, and I quote, "The ghost of Moonville, after an absence of 1 year, has returned, and it is again up to its old pranks, stopping the B&O freight trains and haunting their crews." Now, this has been going on for a long time. To be mentioned is just kind of like an aside in the local paper, and there's been a whole bunch of investigations that have occurred around the Moonville Tunnel because there have been so many violent deaths there, and supposedly outside of the tunnel entrance itself, there is a young woman, and there is also a child that frequent the entrance and are said to disappear as you approach. But it's seen an awful lot of terrible accidents over the years, and they've told people don't do that, and of course they kept doing it, But anyway, it was a great story because it's true, and it has like corroborating stuff at the same time. But the weird stuff that's true, and you can get some another view, is that The one I especially like is Alum Creek State Park. Now that one's on page 8. Now, what had happened is the Army Corps of Engineers, there was this town that was called Cheshire, okay? And the Army Corps of Engineers decided to build a reservoir. And of course, they flooded and made this reservoir, but the town of Cheshire was in the exact spot at the deepest part of the reservoir. So that was okay. They got all the, ordered all the residents out, and they moved on to different places. But the part that was tough was that Cheshire had a cemetery. Well, in the cemetery, they were able to move all the grave sites and everything. But the trouble is they didn't get all of the graves disinterred and moved to another location. There was the locations on some of the graves wasn't inaccurate. So whenever there's a drought in the reservoir, or at other times, some old Cheshire residents would kind of pop up in the middle of this recreational reservoir where people were swimming and boating and stuff like that, which made it kind of horrible because, in 2009 there was a whole bunch of erosion and drought at that part of Ohio. I've been to Alum Creek State Park. It's a beautiful reservoir, it really is. But in 2009 there was another discovery. The Columbus Dispatch and this TV station WBNS reported that 10 wooden coffins, a steel vault, and the remains of 7 people were recovered along the edge of the reservoir. That's a spot where I don't go fishing anymore.
And I can't imagine why.
But every few years or so, there's another remnant of a casket or something that the Corps of Engineers didn't actually get, and they kind of pop up now and again. And what they've done, the Corps of Engineers came back and they built these concrete things to try to keep the erosion at bay for a while, and also to keep the Cheshire residents inside.
Right, keep it from leaving town.
Yeah, keep it from leaving town. But anyway, I just love those stories. But again, there is a lot of the paranormal in the books, a lot more than I ever figured. But there are also just a lot of Ohio firsts and a lot of strange things, like.
Well, there is like
and the really suspenseful. You could title your next book. I had no idea they were from Ohio, and that would be Rod Serling. I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he actually taught at Antioch College. Can you believe that? I mean, now this wasn't like at the before the apex of his career. This is after Twilight Zone came out. I guess from what I've read about him, he had so many fights with the producers of the show and the sponsors of the show that he just one day hit a point where he said, "That's it, I'm done." And he was invited to lecture and took a teaching position at Antioch College. And I was just wondering, what kind of a class would that be, to be able to sit every day and to hear some of his lectures. It must have been wonderful,
Oh, yeah. It would have been awesome to be in that class.
Oh yeah,
I know.
I had Rod Serling for a teacher.
But then again, that's another one of the stories where you're starting to get on that thin ice of some of the kids nowadays say, "Well, who is he?" But. I love kids. They're great to have around, but sometimes you just want to shake them.
They need to be educated.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Man.
And that's been the real joy for me is because the books, they look like, one of those graphic comics, zines, kids pick it up. And the idea that I would like more than anything is if poor kids, I feel sorry for kids nowadays, but because they're pretty much raised in a vacuum. They're afraid to go outside. They're afraid about anything. And if they could learn just one interesting fact or one about their own small town where they live and where they grew up with, it will build a sense of community, and to me, that's the great thing that I miss nowadays, because, back when I was a kid, you could walk anywhere, and, you could meet your neighbors and talk to them, rather than nowadays where you're frankly afraid to meet your neighbors, So, but that's been a joy for me, because there are some kids that have picked it up. And also, another unintended thing was, there are a lot of busy adults that just don't have time to sit down and burn through a 600-page book of history. They're a great resource too. And I'm talking again too much. I'm sorry.
Well, no, you could actually do a page-a-day history, and it's like just read one a night, and it's absolutely thrilling to read some of these stories, because, like I said, I had no idea Rod Serling was from Ohio. Fascinating.
Well, when you mentioned page a day, that was another thing that kind of got me started down this whole road. Was there's a fellow named John Zimkus. Now, I think Henry might know him. He's the education and historical director at the Warren County Historical Society. Okay. Anyway, he was a teacher for like 35 years in the Lebanon schools. Anyway, and he taught Ohio history, and his big thing that he did back in the day was Ohioan of the Day. And he told me, he said, Jeff, if I'd had your books about 30 years ago, because he was having to try to pull from all these other different resources, and there was no such thing as an internet, or there was no such thing as what all these wonderful historical societies have got now. They've got people that are actually transcribing old microfiches and posting them, so you could read all these old newspapers and glean this information. It's just wonderful what's the whole information thing that's going on nowadays. I'm glad to see it. I really am.
Well, now on page 6, you talk about Akron, Ohio, and it's the city of invention. But before I start going into the inventions from Akron, you had a piece underneath that about the Crown Plaza Akron Hotel. Mm-hmm. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, that's it was it's at 135 South Broadway. Anyway, it was a structure that was once owned by the Quaker Oats Company. It was actually a pair of grain silos, very tall grain silos, that they turned into 190 rooms as a hotel. With every room is exactly circular, and it's 8 floors tall. As the grain silos went, that was a pretty goodly size, but they changed it to a hotel. It's a great repurposing for it, and if you have a chance to check out some of the pictures on the net of it, it's pretty amazing thing what they've done. Yeah,
and that's on the National Register of Historic Places now too, which is pretty interesting. I'd never heard of that a hotel being built in grain silos.
It's one of those things where if it's still standing and it's got a good roof, they can change it into something.
Wow. Well, now, the city of invention of Akron, they were the first U.S. toy manufacturing company.
Yes.
They had the first artificial bait, the first synthetic rubber tire and tubeless tire.
Yes.
First graded school system. Wow. The first police cars in the U.S. And I wonder when those would have been built. It had to have been.
That was on another page. That one I don't know, but it's one of those things where, also listening the first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I always thought that was a wonderful story about Al-Anon.
You got that too, yeah.
Where it was held was at the fellow named Wilson's house, it was Dr. Wilson, who was like one of the founding members of Alcoholics Anonymous. But I have a picture in another page I had done of his house where the first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting was held. And in the picture, you see this house, and there are steps that lead up to the front porch. And there are 12 steps that lead to the front porch. I thought that was pretty interesting, though, too.
Wow.
There was some weird story about the Ouija board having some input into calling it the 12-step program or Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah, I read something about that. I forget now. There's a tenuous thing that's yelling at me from the other room, but I just can't lay my hand to it just now, Barb.
Okay. But funny.
All right. I think
We should get back to the paranormal again, right?
no, we're gonna do another quick commercial this time, and this time you can mute your mic.
On my mother's eyes, I swear.
All right, Jeff, you with us?
Yes. Oh,
No, Jeffrey.
Jeff.
Jeffrey. Jeffrey's not with us, huh?
Hold on, there he is. Maybe.
Yes.
You back on?
I'm back.
All right. You're just in time to be able to take us out on a quick break. How's that sound?
Oh, okay. Well, you're listening to the Paranormal View on para-x.com with your host, Henry Foister, ceiling cat Barbara Duncan, and myself, Jeffrey Gould, with tonight's guest, Jeff Wilson, and all things Ohio. So stay tuned for more of the Paranormal View after the break.
Para-X Radio, programming for the open mind.
And welcome back, everybody, right here to the Paranormal View on the Para-X Radio Network. I want to thank everybody for taking time to be with us tonight, those in the chat room and those listening from around the world. I want to thank everybody. Looks like Jeff is falling off again. Jeffrey is falling off again. But we still have Barbara Duncan with us.
Yep, I'm still here.
And I want to welcome back our guest, Jeff Wilson.
Hello.
You see how easy that worked now?
You want to follow the rules.
And we're talking about Jeff's book, Ohio Legends, Volume 2. And last time you was on, we went over Volume 1, which there's so much stuff you can't go through the whole thing. So our advice is it's a great little book to get. Just read a page a night if you want to, or lay it on your coffee table. People comes in to visit, they'll pick it up and start reading it and say, wow, I didn't know all this, which is very interesting. It's a nice little book, and all the drawings and illustrations that's in it, Jeff done those. Does a great job with them. So want to thank you for taking the time to be with us tonight. Our time is still running right on by. But I know Barbara, she always has at least 2 or 3 pages of questions, just about like I do. So
there's just some really interesting stories in here. And anybody who's lived in the Midwest will tell you probably one of the infamous foods that nobody ever talks about eating is the fried bologna sandwiches.
Oh, I love fried bologna sandwiches.
And there is a story in here called Where's Waldo?
Uh-oh. You okay?
Excuse me, sorry. Yeah.
Oh.
Where's Waldo? Which has a tavern there that is famous for their fried bologna sandwiches. I think it's page 139. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just that's another one of those things where I almost got to it last weekend, but with family obligations, I couldn't. They had this fried bologna sandwich that is the bologna itself is about 1/2 of an inch thick. It's just amazing. Everybody that I've talked to says you got to try it. It's another one of those things where you just got to go there, and it's Waldo, Ohio was. I kind of first got interested in that because I was doing this series I talked about last time, the last time I was here, where I did a cartoon of me, and I was dressed up in the Where's Waldo outfit, and I would put that image on different photographs of some of the geological crazy places and waterfalls and strange happenings on and around Ohio to try to get people on Facebook to interact with me. And there are some people that knew the answers like in seconds, and it was it's another one of those wonderfully kooky little towns that are in Ohio that you just got to see for yourself. And
This is weird stuff. Yeah.
It is.
They're known for something. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not. Everybody has to be known for something. There's this one town, and of course I've forgotten the name of it, but they had this amazingly well done reproduction of the Statue of Liberty. They put in front of a gas station. For why I don't know, but I'm going to find that one. And also there's also the center of the world. That may not be in volume 2, but there's this town that's called the center of the world, and it was originally started by a fellow who really believed that the railroad was coming through his town, just like in the old westerns, and he called his town the center of the world. So a fun thing to do is to find this small unincorporated village that has the town name, the center of the world, and get your picture taken in front of it. So it's another one of those quirky things like Cornhenge that I mentioned in our last time here to go to.
There are some really interesting town names in Ohio, and I know you put them on page 102, a lot of them, including PP Township.
Yeah, well, that was it 102 you said?
Yes.
That was another one of those stories. With the stories that I put in the books, I want them to be positive stories and good stories, but I couldn't, in all honesty, put in the rest of the story for PP Township. PP Township was actually, there was a fellow who his name was like Peter Parker or something like that, and his initials were PP, and he had started a community in the township, and it was there was a kind of some bad things that happened there, and the town really never, or the town never really got off the ground. But it was in a way, it was a tragedy that I didn't go into. But also there were a bunch of great other town names that makes you wonder, why would someone want to live in Worstville, Ohio? I'm sorry, why, or Widowville, Ohio. I would be worried about living there, but they're also just fun, and there's the town of Delightful, Ohio. I want to go to Delightful, Ohio. There's rather than a town that's close, a little village that's close to us over here, close to Vandalia, that's called Pig-Eye.
Yeah.
What is that? Pig-Eye, Ohio.
Somebody has a great sense of humor. They have Liar's Corner and Lick Skillet.
Yes. I was just looking at those. Yeah.
Lick Skillet, Ohio. Come on. And that's it. Just goes on. Now the River Styx. Now I did a page on the River Styx. Okay. Now. Did I mention this last time when we were talking the last time about the River Styx? Well, anyway, this story, it was one of those stories that, as an aside, I've got too much information on and couldn't put it on one page. But there was this small village that was basically a mining community, and as it happened, it was surrounded by this forest, and one thing led to another. There was a lightning, and then there was a terrible forest fire. And you guys know about forest fires, and it just completely stripped all the foliage all around this town. And for years and years, nothing could grow. Well, I mean, it took years and years for the stand of trees to come back the way it was. And there were all these acres and acres and acres of spoiled land and fallen trees that had burned and stuff like that. So it was they named the place River Styx because that's what you would imagine hell to look like. And there is a suspension bridge that's very close to the town of River Styx, Ohio. It's you'll remember from old mythology that it was the passageway to hell where Sharon the boatman would collect the coins from you and all of that. And to locals then, it pretty much looked like you imagined hell to be. But another part of the story was there was a terrible train accident where this passenger train with, I think, 4 or 5 cars fell to, like the 80 feet down to this river below. And there was, with the steam engine, there was an explosion, and then there was a fire because at those times they used kerosene to, in these wooden passenger cars. And the point of the story is for years and years and years after that, there was a tremendous amount of accidents of cars driving in the road because as the road took a bend before the bridge proper, people had seen something falling from the bridge, and they had heard the screams of the people as they were being consumed by the flames. Wow. In the river below. It's pretty rough story, but it's a pretty rough section of land back there. It's pretty much southeastern Ohio, but it's exactly named the River Styx. But back to goofy town names. There's just too many to mention. Revenge, Ohio, Spanker, Tick Ridge, and there was also Roachville. Would you want to live in Roachville? I wouldn't. And it just goes. There's
got to be some interesting stories behind these names.
Yeah, see that now that's the great part about it is a lot of times I'm able to go into these historic societies and stuff like that, and I'll have a list of like all the crazy stuff from Ross County, which is there's a hatful. But I'll go into like the library, especially the Historic Society, and there's always one really ancient guy in the back. He doesn't really want to talk to anybody, and he's just kind of in the back. And you go back and you talk to him, spend a few minutes talking to him, and they always have the most wonderful stories, because they have all the information in front of them. And if you could just take a few minutes, it's a much richer source of information than you can get of transcribed newspaper reports or anything off the internet, because it bridges living memory and historic fact. It's just wonderful. It just goes down. Some of my best stories have come from that ancient old guy in back who heard something once upon a time and can produce documentation for it. It's really been a great journey for me. It really has.
Now, everybody knows what happens. I guess it's in February. They all go over and check out that little groundhog and see if he's telling them the truth or not. But people don't know that there is one in Ohio that's named Buckeye Chuck. That's on page 26.
Now, Buckeye Chuck, he's more famous to us Ohioans than any old Puxatawney Phil. Can you imagine trying to spell Puxatawney anyway? It was much easier for me to write a story about Buckeye Chuck, let me tell you. So, but the best thing about it is now this all happened back in I think it was 2013. The Butler County prosecutor, this where they keep Buckeye Chuck in Marion, Ohio, for his when he comes out on Groundhog Day, does he see his shadow or not? He's they pretty much don't like Puxatawney Phil. And the Butler County prosecutor at the time, Michael T. Moser, filed a criminal indictment against Puxatawny Phil, that other famous groundhog, when his prediction was for the coming of spring was wrong. And he claimed that Puxatawny Phil, quote, intentionally misled the nation, and Moser recommended the death penalty for him. And he went on to say that, well, Puxatawny Phil is already serving a life sentence behind bars, as you know. So that's that. But the charges were dropped because state law forbids transporting wildlife across state lines. And it was just another one of those things that, what are these people doing? You know? But that's part of the fun. Now, speaking of Marion, Ohio, have you ever heard of the Merchant Ball?
The Merchant Ball?
Yeah, in Marion, Ohio.
No.
Oh, now this one is one of those stories that's always got me. Anyway, there's a in Marion, Ohio, in their cemetery. I think it's something Grove Cemetery. The Merchant family plot has a centerpiece for the monument, and what it is it's this immense marble ball atop a pediment and pedestal. Well, the thing about the ball is that the granite has been polished to this real high luster in all but a small circle where on the ball itself where the ball was supposed to set. Now, since the ball has been sitting there in 1912, I believe it was, is when it was installed. This granite ball weighs in the neighborhood of 5,400 pounds, okay? And it's been moving since 1912 at close to 1/4 of an inch a year. So the unpolished white circle that's on the side of the ball is roughly at a 1 or a 2 o'clock position, instead of being on the underneath where it's supposed to attach to the pediment. Now, there's been a lot of theories, and it's appeared in Ripley's Believe It or Not too, of it must be capillary action of water leaking in between the ball and the pediment that holds it up, and freezing and thawing and stuff, and that's why it's rotating. But supposedly there are people that still today are going out and they're taking measurements because it's still revolving, and they don't know why. Wow. But if you have a chance to to type in the Marion Ball on the internet, you'll see these terrific pictures that just don't make sense at all.
And is the ground level?
Yes, the ground is level, and there's this. It's a beautiful monument. It really is, but it's creepy nonetheless. I seen
that story in Fate magazine back in the 70s.
Really? Did you?
Yeah.
Fate magazine. I love Fate magazine. My folks would get it, and I'd read it for the short stories, but never believed a word. Until about 3 months ago.
Now, you've got one in here on page 93 that I'm thinking I might have to go get me a Geiger counter or something and start looking. But it's called The Lost French Treasure.
Yes.
And it's on page 93. Won't you tell the story? We might have a whole bunch of people wanting to go out looking for this.
Except a Geiger counter won't do you any good.
Oh, it won't? Oh, man.
Metal detector, maybe. A
Okay.
Geiger counter, no.
I'll get one of them then. A metal detector.
Okay, well, this is a town of Minerva, Ohio. It's another one of those weird town names. So anyway, for over 250 years, Minerva, Ohio, and Carroll County has been a destination for treasure hunters that are seeking an estimated $28 million stash of gold lost by the French in 1755. The legend has several versions, but here's a short one. In 1755, the French held a possession at Fort Duquesne, which later became Fort Pitt in Pittsburgh. Threatened by an attack by British troops, the French loaded nearly a ton of gold and silver intended for payroll onto 10 pack horses and escaped the British along the Great Trail, which roughly follows today's Route 30. Now, somewhere near present-day Minerva, Ohio, fearing an imminent attack from the British, the French quickly unloaded the pack horses and buried the treasure, making a note of local landmarks. And in the skirmish that followed, all but 2 of the French were killed. Later in 1829, the nephew of one of the survivors discovered a map amongst his uncle's possessions and began a search that has lasted to this day without success. Some clues and landmarks have been discovered, but the buried gold has remained unfound. Recently, Minerva, Ohio has continued their Lost Gold Festival, but with every new generation, the legend comes alive and sparks a fresh gold rush to Minerva, Ohio. Now, there's another story that runs pretty much like this too. That was the Ashtabula disaster, where a passenger train, derailed and fell to the shallow waters of this creek below. It's in Ashtabula, Ohio, and there was something like $4 or $5 million that was supposedly an Army payroll that was lost. Anyway, no one, as the wooden passenger cars hit, the ground below, they caught fire, and a great many people died from either, because it was a wintry night, December 2nd, I think it was a driving snowstorm, and most died of exposure, but there were some that were burned to death in the crash. But the Army payroll was never found, and I forget the name of the state forest that the Ashtabula Bridge, the site of the Ashtabula Bridge is at, but I forget the name of it. It was one of those state forests that's publicly maintained and everything like that, because they have an old stand of trees and stuff. But anyway, the point of the story is there has been people that have shown up there with shovels and trying to dig in the shallow water, trying to find any kind of remnants from the wreckage of the train that had fallen there, and perhaps one day find the gold treasure that's there. The latest was last summer. A fisherman snagged an iron wheel that he drug up onto the bank of the water itself, and was about to carry it away when he was accosted by a couple of park rangers that said pretty much, get out, don't ever come back again, because every few years or so there'll be people who would just discover the story and to go treasure hunting. But the thing about it is the park rangers and all the politicos that are involved always say there's nothing there, there never has been anything there, it's just a legend, and don't come back. But they also are very careful to have mentioned in the papers and their public pronouncements that if there is anything found of any value, it belongs to the state.
Right.
And we have lawyers that will aggressively pursue this, and it always seemed funny to me, like, if it ain't there, why are you worried about somebody calling it off? But it's another one of those lost treasure stories that a lot of people have actually followed up on and found artifacts. So, but nothing of real value has been discovered yet. But I love the lost treasure stories too.
Now, on page 84, you have a story about George R. Koval, who was a Russian spy.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's one of those things where the story didn't come out, until much, much later, but he did a tremendous amount of damage to our to our national security. He was a Russian spy, and he was credited himself with stealing most of the secrets for the nuclear arms race, and sending them on to the Soviet Union. He was born in Iowa, And Koval had a flawless American accent and was a master of blending in. Everybody remembers him as being completely unremarkable, you know. He's one of those faceless people that they work with, and he was a special engineer in a detachment for the Manhattan Project. In 1948, after he had stolen most of the secrets about the atomic weapons, he obtained a passport for 6 months to travel in Europe, and he disappeared behind the Iron Curtain. And while other spies, such as Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, were caught after the war, Koval's activities have been only recently revealed. And Koval died in 2006 at the ripe old age of 92 in Moscow. He was also given some kind of special heroes medal, and also, you know, for the stipend for life from Putin, which is, of course, one of our great friends nowadays.
Yeah.
Interesting. You know, we was talking about famous people from Ohio, and there's one, the way that you talk, a lot of people don't know some of these. Well, this one here, I don't even remember that much of, but I know she's been in movies. But it's called Lillian Gish.
I love Lillian Gish.
Yeah.
Yes.
And her sister, and all the silent movies they were in, like Orphans of the Storm and stuff.
Yeah.
That's on page. What was the one with her and her sister were offered? The big strip out there that's under the Hollywood sign. It was like all this trim. What's it called? Anyway, for $300. And they said, nah, let's go out and buy dresses instead. But anyway, what pages was that on? Lillian Gish.
59.
59?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, she was offered the chance to buy the Sunset Strip in Hollywood for $300. And I guess the sisters talked about the matter and decided to buy dresses instead. But she was one of the very few film stars who was able to survive the talkies, because she was born in Springfield, Ohio, and to help make ends meet, Lillian I'm gone now. Hold on. Yeah, Lillian and Dorothy.
Yeah.
Had made the transition, but Lillian was a lot more popular. But the thing that I thought was really great about the story is in the 1960s version of Unforgiven, Burt Lancaster and director John Huston took Gish out to the desert to teach her how to handle a gun, but they discovered that she could draw and shoot faster than anyone on the set. Oh, okay. Here, little lady, I'll show you how to use a gun. Well, I guess she showed them. So she was an amazing woman, and it was just a joy to draw her, because she had one of those faces that, you know how the old silent movies had pictures of these actresses that were, by our standards, not that pretty. You know what I'm saying? But she had a beautiful face, and I think with that, and she had a great acting ability. That's how she was able to smoothly, go into the talkies, because those people from back then, those actors from back then, they always bring something more to a role, because they've acted in front of real people in a live audience. You know what I'm saying? Instead of just a few seconds when the camera comes on and it comes off. They have a separate quality that I've always thought was in its way, and really engaging. But but I just love drawing a picture of her. Beautiful lady.
Barbara, you got another one?
Okay. Well, yeah, because we're coming down to the end, but we got to do this one, get back on to the paranormal here.
Okay.
And one of my favorite topics, which is it's page 54, and that is famous last lines.
Oh, what was that? 59 again?
Yeah, 54.
54. Okay.
And there are some
yes.
doozies in there. Yeah.
Yeah, there is. Clarence Darrow. Okay, the fierce litigator with the Snopes monkey trial and all that. His last words were, "Have Judge William H. Hawley deliver my eulogy because he knows everything about me and has the sense not to tell it." I always liked the one from James French. He was a convicted murderer. He was being strapped into the Ohio State's electorate. He told the newspapermen that had crowded around, "Hey, fellas, how about this for headlines for tomorrow's paper? French fries."
Wow.
And of course, my hero. Huh?
At least he had a sense of humor, right?
Oh, well, that's the way to go. That's the way to go. And James Thurber's was of course, my hero, the humorist. I've been through his house. It's supposedly haunted, but that's the Thurber story, not mine. But anyway, it's in Columbus, wonderful place. But anyway, his last words were, "God bless, God damn." And Clement Blandingham, the great Copperhead, the great dissenter during the Civil War. He was from Dayton. Wonderful guy. There's a whole story about him that John Zimkus, again from Warren County, did that was pretty amazing about this guy. He was just as courageous as they come. But anyway, his last words were, "My God, I shot myself." What happened was Blandingham was he was defending a murder charge, and his client said that he had stuffed his pistol in his front waistband, and what happened was the guy that was shot and killed stuffed his pistol in his waistband of the front of his pants, and whenever the gentleman that was killed and him had words, the guy that was killed went to draw his pistol, and the gun went off, and he shot himself in the abdomen, and he died. And that was this guy's defense. So the night before the trial, Clement Vallandigham, his lawyer at the Golden Lamb Inn in Lebanon, he was showing another lawyer what exactly, in his opinion, happened, and he grabbed the wrong pistol. There were two pistols that were on the bureau. One was loaded and one wasn't loaded, and he grabbed the one that was loaded and stuffed it inside his waistband. And as he got up from a sitting position from his chair, drew his pistol, and it discharged. And he said, "My God, I shot myself." So, but his story, Clement Vallandingham's story, is another one of those things where you get just a little bit further into it, and you realize what an amazing guy this was. I've seen his grave at Woodlawn here in Dayton, and he's an amazing fellow.
Wow.
But also there's George Armstrong Custer, we've mentioned before, the last program. Hurrah, boys, we've got him. We'll finish them all and go home to our station. And, of course, the marker that's in Withamsville, Ohio, it was a kind of a foot marker gravestone. The gravestone actually says, Joseph Patsy Orse. He died because of his wife, 9/16/73. There's no other explanation of this. It just he died. Yeah, he died because of his wife. I don't know if she talked him to death or what actually happened. But this is a lot of those, famous last weird things you can put on your tombstone. I've often thought of what I would have put on my tombstone, but I've got a couple cartoons I did, and I think I'd like to have one parting shot at my family. Get that last word in. I really appreciated this tonight. You guys have been more than kind to me. I got to tell you, these books, they've been a great thing for me because I've met so many wonderful people along the way. You're available at Amazon.com and, of course, through our Facebook page, Ohio Legends /Jeff Wilson. And I have a website. I just Google in Jeff Wilson, and a lot of the pictures for these wonderful stories. They're great pictures that you can see for some of these stories. And I just want to say thanks to Henry, and thanks to Barb, and thanks to wherever Jeffrey is. And
He's off in the ether somewhere.
Oh, is he gone again?
I don't know. Is it something I said?
No. He has bad connections a lot out there.
Yeah.
So, but that's why he's in and out a lot. He does better if I call him on his phone. I just don't know how much airtime he has left on his phone. But but anyway, he should.
So, what is coming up next? You mentioned that you're working on the third book.
Yes. Well, actually, I'm working on 2 books simultaneously, but also as an aside, I don't have any within the next month or so engagements for any speaking engagements for any of the historic societies. I did. A lot of them are struggling small things and small societies, and I pretty much go in there and donate a lot of the proceeds to them so they can get started. I'm working on book 3. I have it about halfway done. That's why I was looking for story ideas from your listeners about Ohio. They have to be squeaky clean for the kiddies now. And also I'm working on that living history I was going on about a few minutes earlier. And in addition, I've had this website, Discover Ohio to Go, wanted to share on their webpage some of my destination stories. There are stories about small towns that have great things to see. Much like Waldo, Ohio was. You have to get a bologna sandwich at Waldo, or you have to go get a Kewpie burger, or you have to do these. They get a real taste and an idea of the community and texture of some of these wonderful little towns. And they'll be. I believe their next week is where they're going to be online with that. They're going to have a special section for my, what to do and see in Ohio. And
there's just a heck of a lot of festivals going on back there.
Yes, there is.
Coffin races and what have you.
There is. That's a wonderful, great thing that they have. There's always, of course, there's the Ren Fest that everybody's gone to. But if you go to some of these things like the Skunk Festival, or if you go to all these other wonderful things, or some of these very weird, very strange little communities have their own kind of, Rittman Sleepwalker Festival. But the one that I especially like is there's a little town that I've grown fond of. It's called Richwood, and in this town, everyone is crazy. They're just nuts. I mean, last year I went to the snowmobile races. Okay, and it was in the summer. It was about 90 degrees. Okay, and they had taken these snowmobiles and without removing the front sleds and putting wheels on them, and they were drag racing them down the street.
Wow.
And this year, another one of the things that they had was they're very big on angry women there because they have a skillet tossing festival.
Wow.
Now, it's part of their county fair. This is still a tossing festival. Is they pass out 8-pound cast iron skillets to women
To throw?
and
Wow.
see whoever can throw it the furthest.
Jeff,
And yeah, well,
we got to go.
oh, I am sorry. I talked again too much, but thank you everybody again.
All right. Well, it's too late to get Jeffrey Gould back on, but next week we're going to have be live from the Pavilion Antique Mall in Ross, Ohio. So be with us for that. It's part of the world's ghost hunt. So no telling what'll be going on there. We want to thank Jeff Wilson for taking the time to be with us tonight. Great show. And Jeffrey Gould. You did make it back, huh?
Yeah, happy
well,
autumnal equinox. I just got back.
Oh, well, good. Until then, we got to run. This is Henry Foister. Anybody else?
Yeah, I guess Jeffrey is shoved off again.
Oh.
And this is Barbara Duncan. Everybody, good night.
All right. We will see you next week at the same time. So, good night, everybody.
Good night.
You've been listening to the Paranormal View on the Para-X Radio Network. Join us again next week at the same time for more of the Paranormal